5th March, 1884. Murphy has been forced to agree with me that the creature was the cause of the murders in London, for with its death the killings have ceased. There has been no sign of the Red Door either, but this does not reassure me. I would expect retribution from the entity that created the seaweed creature, which I believe is the self-same entity which resides behind the door. I cannot help but think that when revenge does come, it will be all the more vicious for this brewing. Murphy's leg is in a cast now, and as such he has been for the most part confined to his office in Scotland Yard, which has made him more implacable than ever. He has, for some reason, decided to make Anna and me into his personal aides, and often calls us to the yard only to send us away again in search of information. He seems to have taken this sudden appearance of the supernatural in his city, as he calls it, as a personal affront to his secular, pragmatic mentality, and is now committed, well nigh obsessed, with purging the mysterious phenomena from London and, more than likely, all of Great Britain. Anna and I have continued to spend most of our time together, as I still find my ancestral house uninhabitable. This is, and must be, I realize, a temporary arrangement, but I can think of no feasible alternative. The house is, I am certain, unsaleable, and even if it were not, I would not inflict it upon any other human being, and I do not currently have the funds to purchase any other lodgings, as my business has, understandably, suffered a loss of my attention. Mad Zeke rarely makes himself known, preferring to stick to the streets and continue his begging, which he says is much more pleasant now that spring is setting in, although one would imagine that all the melting snow would make things vastly unpleasant. We all wait in a period of suspense. I, perhaps more than others, for I feel I have the least agency in the matter. Murphy, in charge of a good chunk of the London police force, has made it his mission to extirpate the Red Door and all its branches. Mad Zeke seems singularly unconcerned about the whole matter. Anna's stunning practicality and unswerving courage lent her a greater potency in any matter she should put her mind to. But I sit alone in this red-carpeted room, my hands trembling, my heartbeat quick and shallow. Perhaps it is because the door has a greater hold upon me due to my prolonged exposure to it. Perhaps it is my hereditary lack of constitution. Perhaps there is a part of me, dark and secret, which wishes to seek the mysteries beyond the Red Door. God help me if that is the case, for I am haunted to this day by the brief glimpse through the door's keyhole of the gleaming, inhuman eye beyond. It does not do to dwell on these things. I must go out into the world and drive these strange and unsettling thoughts from my mind with the stolid practicality of London life. 8th March, 1884. Anna has made a suggestion, and while it has given me much to think about, I cannot decide whether I like the idea or despise it. She approached me yesterday morning as I sat at this desk, staring out the window with my pen dangling idly in my hands and my journal spread upon the desk, the virgin pages bare of all thought. "Leslie," she said to me, settling down in a second chair she had brought from the shop beneath. "It is not healthy for you to so dream all day. You will wilt like flower in winter." I sighed. My attention had been loose at best for the past week, and even then I found it difficult to rouse myself to her admonitions. "Perhaps you're right," I admitted. "Of course I am right," she declared. What for you is needed is to have action again. And I have thought of action for you. Oh. While you sit and dream so, I go out into city and ask questions. I find grandmother of poor Judy Masterson. To her we shall talk and discover more secrets of your so unhappy house. I stared at her, my attention grasped fully for the first time in days. You can't be serious, I said to her. Why I cannot? She demanded. Stand up, Leslie. We go today. No! I cried, more out of surprise than actual defiance. I wouldn't even know what to ask. And, for I had recalled something, and the book from the library, didn't it say that there was a long-standing familial hatred between Fletchers and Masters? She might throw me out on the street at first sight of me. And that's even assuming the Masterson family has anything to do with the original owners of the mansion. I shook my head at her. No, Anna, I won't do it, I declared. Anna shrugged. So, you will not do it. I did not think you would. I prepared to go alone yesterday, so today I will go. She turned to sweep from the room. Now, wait just one moment, I yelled, leaping to my feet. If you think for 1 second I'm going to let you go out there and talk to that woman alone, I'm afraid you'll be sorely disappointed. The creature's attack on Anna, I'm sorry to say, had made me incredibly protective of her. She had not seemed to mind, or perhaps she simply hadn't noticed. So familiar is this conversation, Anna mused. Come then, Leslie. There is not to us all day. What could I do but follow? She led me through the damp streets, taking a twisting, roundabout path to another corner of Soho. I will admit, the exposure to fresh air quickened my blood a bit, but the nervousness brought on by this sudden confrontation far outweighed any benefit I might have gained from the walk. When we arrived at Miss Masterson's apartment, the landlady, a stout woman of perhaps 45, informed us curtly that Miss Masterson was not taking visitors. She ain't seeing nobody, she told us. No visitors. That's what she said. No visitors. Please, Mrs. Downey, Anna begged. We come here for very important business. Please, will you tell Mrs. Masterson that we are wishing to speak with her? I ain't telling nobody nothing, Mrs. Downey retorted. And I couldn't care less what you was wishing. No visitors. I am certain, if you will only explain to her. It quickly became evident that the enterprise was fruitless, and I began to suspect that perhaps Mrs. Downey was protecting more than her tenant's desire for privacy. I put a hand on Anna's arm to stop the futile arguing. Thank you for your time, Mrs. Downey, I said, as politely as I could. Miss Maximiak and I will be going now. Would you mind telling Miss Masterson that we called? I should hate for her to lose this opportunity on account of a simple misunderstanding. Mrs. Downey's interest was piqued. Opportunity? She inquired. I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Downey, but I'm afraid that our business is between ourselves and Miss Masterson. Good day to you, ma'am. We shall call again some other time. I led Anna from the room and back out into the street. So, you have English blood to go inside? Anna asked. It's just the way these people work, I explained. They can't keep away from mystery or gossip. She'll undoubtedly tell Miss Masterson that we were there and what we wanted, and Miss Masterson will inevitably be happy to receive us when we call again, in, say, a week or so. Anna looked at me with something approaching pride. It is good you are returned, Leslie, she said, and took my hand. Now, I mused, I think perhaps we should pretend to be reporters of some sort. I doubt she'd be happy to speak with me, knowing my ancestry, so it may become necessary to have an alias and a disguise as well. Or, perhaps, we will do away with all silliness, and I will speak to Miss Masterson, and you will sit in corner and make no noise. I hardly think... Yes, Leslie, I believe that is so. I wrenched my hand from hers. Anna, what's come over you? I demanded. You're behaving quite abominably. She glared at me for a long moment. Tonight, Mr. Fletcher, you may take your things from my apartment and find for yourself new living quarters. What? I cried, before regaining control of myself. Anna, please, let's talk this over somewhere quiet. What, you are ashamed? No, Anna, Listen, Anna, please. If you'll only tell me what's the matter, I'm certain we can work this out like civilized people. There's no need to have a great row in the street. You think I cannot do anything? She accused. Always you must be following me, keeping an eye on me. I can go nowhere without you snapping at my heels like a little dog. I am a woman, Leslie, not a child. I stared at her, open-mouthed and quite speechless. Anna, I'm sorry, I managed at last. Why didn't you say anything? You would not listen. I would. All you do is stare out window, except when I go to do something important. Then it is suddenly, oh, I must go with you, Anna. It is not fair. I'm sorry, Anna, I said again. I haven't been myself. I know I haven't. I was so frightened. I was so scared on that bridge that thing would kill you and I'd never see you again. I choked on my words, swallowing down the lump that was rising in my throat. And do you think I was not so frightened? She demanded. Do you think I am so cold that I do not wake in middle of night with visions of this worst of nights? Carefully, after a moment's pause, I embraced her. And to my surprise, I found her crying into my shoulder. I could do little else but console her with quiet, meaningless words. Eventually, I managed to take her home, just as she managed to regain her composure. Fortunately for the both of us, the red door was not at the back of the shop when we arrived. We talked for many hours, at first about little nothings, and then, carefully, edging into more serious matters. We both wept. I say so unashamedly, for they were tears of love, and not born of weakness, but of great strength of heart and emotion. I can say only that by morning we had resolved our conflict, and I write now at her desk with renewed vigor for our investigations. Today I shall go to the library to find what information I might concerning my ancestral home, and who knows, I may even find something concerning the Red Door and its dark heritage. And tomorrow Anna and I shall return to Miss Masterson's residence to at last complete our interview. Later. Cannot leave this in the library, but cannot take book with me. Historical archives. Copying relevant passages. The Master House, a history. G.C. Ray, 1733. Of the sordid history of the master house, much has been speculated, and little confirmed by actual inquiry or research. Indeed, the briefest and least effortful of questions yields a wealth of information from the populace, all of which is unsupported at best and vicious falsehood in the larger part. Rumours of witchcraft, satanic ritual, and pagan rites are common. Actual evidence of these activities is largely absent. However, we took it upon ourselves to investigate firsthand the mysteries of the master house, and with permission from its current owner, one Charles Rayleigh Fletcher of Lamburn, my great-great-grandfather, Leslie Fletcher, we were allowed to freely roam the house and grounds. Mr. Fletcher was adamant that no such heathen activities occurred in or around his house, and was eager to clear the name of his family home. Description of Fletcher acquisition of manor from master family. Little more detail than what Anna told me. Aleph. We began our investigations in the main part of the house, finding little more than a well-reconstructed home with obvious signs of a great deal of care on the part of its owners and diligence on the part of its caretakers. We thoroughly examined the library, study, dining room, guest rooms, attic, and even servants' quarters, and found no sign of illicit activities of any kind, much less the satanic practices suggested by the populace. We returned the next day to examine the grounds, and similarly found nothing out of the ordinary. A few patches of turned earth, which Mr. Fletcher explained as graves for the family dogs, were the only suggestion of any activity other than rather lovely landscaping and upkeep. We concluded our investigations upon the third day, examining the only room of the house we had not yet had the pleasure of investigating, this being the basement. Mr. Fletcher had insisted that he accompany us for that particular part of the tour, giving no further reason than that such a place is, by its very nature, cluttered and poorly arranged for the reception of guests. His reticence, we must admit, sharply piqued our interest, as he had been up to that point most welcoming and open regarding all facets of his home. Nonetheless, we took it upon ourselves to approach this as we had approached the previous entirety of our investigations, with an open mind and objective stance. It must be said, the basement of the Fletcher house, as many such basements of its era, is not a pleasant place. As Mr. Fletcher told us, it is the only part of the house that remains in its original condition, having been mercifully untouched by the fire. Emphasis added, LF. Due to its hardy stone construction and isolation from the rest of the house, at least as concerns flammables. Also due to this, a few remnants of the previous owner's belongings can be found amidst the clutter, which objects, Mr. Fletcher assures us, he would point out if requested. These reduced to some ancient books, scripted in Latin, a daguerreotype of unknown subject and origin, and what appeared to be an adult ram's skull. When we queried Mr. Fletcher about the skull and why it remained in his possession, rather than with the rest of the garbage, he merely shrugged and replied that it was not his to throw away. When asked about the second door in the basement, specifically to where it might lead, Mr. Fletcher again refused to comment, saying that the door perhaps used to lead somewhere, but is quite well bricked up now. There was a cave-in, I believe, before we purchased the manor. It certainly does not lead anywhere now. We suggested trying the door, but Mr. Fletcher assured us it was securely locked, as well as being bricked up on the other side. Nothing else is of import. How long has it been there? God, and what used to be behind it, if anything? I am half tempted to search for these objects. The book, the daguerreotype, the ram's skull, but to do so would require entering that basement again, and that I cannot do. There is no one I can ask about my great-great-grandfather who would know any more about him than I do. Oh, God, how long has it been there? How long has it been there, waiting for me to find it?